All right. Well, we are here today on the Gravity Podcast with my friend Gino Wickman. It is really awesome to have you, Gino. Thanks for taking the time to do this.
Brett, it is a pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's funny when I just think back a little bit upon kind of getting to know you. We are in Strategic Coach together, and I remember, kind of a meeting of the minds out at Abundance 360 where we had kind of a good connection, and it really seemed like, there was some real depth to your story and to kind of what you're doing and who you are that I was really drawn to. So it's great to have you here on the podcast. That's really what we're trying to do here, is to get people to see the full person, the full human being, and that full journey that has led to the success that they've had. You've had a lot of success, but I know there's a real deep, beautiful journey there. So maybe you could start at the beginning and just tell us a little bit about kind of early childhood, your upbringing, your family, et cetera.
Yeah, sure. And it's really funny because when I was building EOS Worldwide, I didn't do one single podcast to build that. And now with this new project, I'm doing a lot of podcasts, and I was thinking about why I don't do them typically. And it's because I don't love talking about myself. But so I prepare you and start with that disclaimer, because get ready, you may have to pull a few things out of me. My focus is always about them, and so it's always about who I'm helping, who the audience is, how the content helps them. So with that, I'll, in answering your question, growing up, I moved 9 times by the time I was 10. So a very entrepreneurial father. And that certainly has to have an effect on a human being. I had an older brother and a younger brother. So I was a middle son and a newfound half sister when I was about 40 years old. And so with that, grew up in a very entrepreneurial family, had 16 cousins, 14 out of 16 were all self-employed at one point. So just a very entrepreneurial family. I did not go to college. There's only, I think, 1 out of 16 cousins that went to college. It happened to be my younger brother. And just took my leap. I just wanted to go make money. And so I graduated high school with a solid 2.3 GPA. And high school, it was just a party to me. It was all about fun. Academia is not for me. And so as my friends all went off to college, I just went to work and kind of got educated my own wild and crazy entrepreneurial way.
Yeah. Gino, let me hop in there for a second, because, there's a lot there kind of early on that I want to just better understand. Sure. And, I'm like already remembering why I love you and why I'm, so kind of relating to you. Because, I had the same experience from an academic standpoint. It wasn't for me, it was all a party and learning like a ton, right? And I really give that period of time a lot of kind of credit for who I am today, right? I that was my education. But before we get to that, I want to kind of go back. Did you say you were in 9 cities by the age of 10? And you credited that to your dad being an entrepreneur. So tell me a little bit about, what was happening, where you were moving, why, was he in and out of a whole bunch of things? Tell me a little more about that.
Yeah, exactly. So he was in the Navy for 9 years, but that wasn't part of the moving, because he was out of the Navy right around when I was born. And so, but when he came out, he started a milk route, which failed. And so that was a move. And then he got into real estate. And when he got into real estate sales, he failed in his first year and changed offices. And that was a move. And then he became very successful, a top producer. And from there, became a manager, and then a general manager, and then a trainer, and then a national training director. And so every one of those moves was a move. And so each time he made another move in his career, it was another physical move. And so at the point that he became the national training director for Realty World, which back in the mid 70s, that was the big real estate company. That was a move to Virginia. So all of the moves were around Southeast Michigan, but for the one to Virginia when I was 9. And then he went out on his own and formed his own training company and became a renowned speaker, a Hall of Fame speaker in the National Speakers Association. And so that was a move. And then once he started that, things kind of stabilized. And so the next house we stayed in for 7 years, and they continue to move around. So my mom and dad have moved now 22 times in their marriage. I think
it's amazing. So what, most of the time I think, we're just kind of going with what is, when you're young, you don't really, kind of have a lot of perspective on what's happening. But what was that like for you? Was it just like, hey, this is what we do? Was it like, did it suck? Was it adventurous, exciting? What was it like?
I just was rolling with the punches and kind of going with it. So I don't know what it was like, honest to God, because this is what I thought life was. And what I fondly remember is each move was kind of during the school year. And so I can remember the teacher reading the note to the class saying, "Class, we have a new student, his name is." And then I remember her sharing with the class, "Unfortunately, Gino's leaving us." So it's like, just kind of come and go. It was absolute insanity. And then again, there were good and bad, coming into a new city, bunch of new people. So I don't know how deep you want to go into some of the specifics, but there's nothing easy about it in hindsight, but during it was just, this is life. This is how life works.
Yeah. Well, we'll go as deep as you're willing to go. I mean, if there's anything in there you want to share, love to hear it. I'm just, it's just kind of struck me as, these early childhood experiences, I do think really tend to kind of form who we are. And, what I'm imagining, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that, you kind of have to get pretty tough pretty quick to be able to, we have a new student. Those are some scary words, right? And if you're hearing that, every year, you got to figure out how to navigate things. And, as an entrepreneur, certainly that becomes critical. So, is that a skill that you developed, by going through that experience?
Yeah, there's no question. And I haven't psychoanalyzed it too much, but for sure, and some of those experiences were difficult. Like one of the things that would happen is, this was probably 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. When I would come into a new area, the girls would like me, and that would piss the guys off. And so, fights and people wanting to kick my ass. And so a lot of fear. And so that, there's that going on. I definitely developed this ability to adapt, to each situation. I developed a great sense of humor. So I learned that humor gets me out of a lot of stuff. And I was an absolute nut in middle school and high school, because then that sense of humor really served me well. And I was, the class clown, rowdiest kid in school. I was wild and crazy. And I also rebelled a lot. So I think there was some built-in anger that I was experiencing. I was a pretty angry kid at 15. Discovered alcohol, that was that made things wild and crazy. And then shoot forward to my mid-20s, I then worked it all out in therapy during 7 years of therapy. So
well, good. We're going to talk about that too, but tell me a little bit. So, this, we talked a little bit about kind of not necessarily being, academic and really, excelling in school, and that being just not your thing. And I'm curious just to kind of like get into that a little bit deeper with you, because I'm wondering, it's clear that you're smart, you have, great intelligence, and I believe that, right? It's not just like work ethic. It's not like you just know how to grind. Like you're actually, I've talked to you, I know you, you're an intelligent man, right? There was something about the school experience that wasn't connecting to you. And, you mentioned the anger. Is this just kind of like your rebellion? You're kind of like not wanting to conform? What is it that has you not wanting to do well in school and instead, kind of get attention or find your friends your kind of way through partying, humor, goofing off, being rebellious? Why is that, do you think?
I don't know that I have the perfect answer for you. And going to the intelligence, I would consider myself to be very street smart and definitely a hard worker and a lot of grit. So I do believe, I have to and had to work twice as hard as everyone else. But again, it's hard for me to answer the question because I think it goes back to all of that craziness. And the other thing is my parents, gave us a lot of freedom. They gave us so much free reign to just run. So to me, it was heaven. I just considered it all living, and so again, in high school, academics weren't for me. I didn't even correlate the fact that I'm here to learn that something that's going to serve me later in life. This was just one big social event. I had a blast, and I ran with a group of guys that we just lived life to the absolute fullest. It was the wildest and craziest run. So I don't know how to describe that. And then after all that, I continued to be a pretty wild man after high school, and up to about 23 is when I really started to settle down. But once I got out of high school, I was a worker, man. The first thing I did is went and worked in a machine shop for 3.5 years, working 61 hours a week. And so I loved making money. I loved working hard, and I just worked hard and I played hard, which I continue to do to this day. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that.
Yeah, well, no, you are. And I'm curious, about kind of the high school jump into work. Was it college just not something that you thought was an option to you, had no interest in it? What was kind of your brother doing, people around you, people in your high school, your friends, your buddies that you were running with? Did nobody go, or was this something you just said, not for me? And kind of how were your parents with all of that?
Yeah. So it was definitely not for me. I clearly knew. So most of my friends went off to college. 100%. I mean, they went to school. That was the path. But if I knew it was not for me, I knew that I wanted out of academia as fast as possible. I knew I was going to be successful. There was not a doubt in my mind. I knew how much I was going to make at 25 years old. I was going to be a millionaire by age 30. So very driven from that standpoint. No, so I just knew. And I spent a tremendous amount of time at college from 18 to 22 or 21. So I spent many a weekend. So I got all the social benefits. We had a lot of fun up there. So I would go up and stay with my friends. But no, to sit in a classroom for another minute was the last thing on earth I was ever going to do.
Yeah, and I guess I'm a little kind of struck just because I have kids, that are, going off to school. One's in college, one's going next year. And I look at kind of their friends and the environment that they're living in, and like not going to college is just like not an option, right? And I think it's that way for most people. And I think part of the reason why it's not an option is because it's just so kind of built into the fabric of our society that is what you are supposed to do. And if you don't do it, then something's wrong or off, right? And I'm wondering, like, did that take courage for you to kind of make that decision that you weren't going to do that? Where did this kind of strength come from that had you clear that you knew you would be successful and you knew that you were going to make this money by certain ages? Where did you get that kind of self kind of confidence to be able to know that and make those decisions?
Yeah. So you said a word earlier, rebellious. So I'm extremely rebellious by nature. And I was back then. And so I'm going to shoot forward to today, and then I'm going to shoot back to answer your question, because, my new project, which we're going to talk about later, is all about helping entrepreneurs in the making get a huge jumpstart on taking their entrepreneurial leap and starting a better startup. Well, there's an old saying by Danielle Kennedy that says, we teach what we needed the most. And so I'm teaching this new content and this new passion. I'm teaching what I needed the most, because at 18, I was this mislabeled derelict. I was this entrepreneur in the making. I was lost, confused, insecure. And so it was my rebellious nature that was pushing against all of the forces And so a lot of that confidence was a facade, and I was terrified, but I also knew in my gut I was going to be successful and wanted to be very successful. So I don't know if that answers it, but I want to share that because that was my current state at 18. It's not like I had it all figured out and had this perfect plan. Just the opposite. I was terrified. I just knew that academics were not the way for me to learn the things that I wanted to learn and the things that I wanted to do in life.
Yeah, well, I do think it's really important, and it's kind of why I have found this kind of method of interviewing people to be really important, is because I see each one of these steps as really critical to ultimately end up doing what you're doing. And I love that you are solving problems that you experienced in your own life. I mean, to me, that's really where, kind of the gold is that you experienced something, you embodied something to the extent that you actually know what you want to fix for other people. That's a beautiful thing. And so all of this seems to really be serving you and, now serving and having served many others.
Yeah, there's no question. And, and on the college conversation, this path that the world is being forced to take, I disagree with it for everyone. And so certainly if you're going to go be a professional, a doctor, an attorney, I mean, there's certain paths that you must go to college. But if you are an entrepreneur, and this is my discovery and aha, but if you're an entrepreneur in the making, you do not have to go to college. You can succeed in life without going to college. Now, I write an entire chapter in the book called College or Not and give all the data so that you can decide for yourself. When in doubt, you probably should go to college, because if you're not an entrepreneur, you're probably going to need that degree to get a job, because unfortunately, that's the way it works right now. But if you are an entrepreneur, there's nothing written that says you have to go to college. And I'm the living proof. But at the same time, the statistics are, of all small business owners, only like 46% have a degree. So most small business owners don't have a degree. So that's the data. And again, I teach what I needed the most. And so my passions, my teachings, the things that I'm obsessed about, they absolutely all stem from wounds and pain from the past. And so that is absolutely why I'm teaching that mislabeled derelict that I was back at 18, so that anybody out there that's age 13 to 23 that's kind of struggling with figuring all this out, this is a how-to manual if you think you've got this genetic encoding. Yeah,
and I want to come back and talk about Leap really in depth. I want to kind of talk through the journey towards that a little bit more, because you talk about kind of this mislabel and the pain, and I think you're right. I think unfortunately, and this is kind of back to the intelligence thing, I think street intelligence, to me, that's there. Oftentimes, I think intelligence gets confused with knowledge.
Yeah.
People that learn a lot in school know a lot. It's like I think it's the Einstein saying, like, if you can look it up, why do you need to learn it, right? Like, especially more true today than ever. And I think maybe there's even a little bit of a movement to recognizing, thanks to you and others, that there are different ways to learn, there are different ways to be intelligent, and there are different ways to succeed, and that college isn't for everybody, or you don't have to necessarily study business. You can study philosophy. You don't have to be a doctor or lawyer. The things that when I was growing up were so highly valued. You can be, but it's that passion. It's the passion that you really want to pull out of people.
Exactly.
And so, I want to kind of back up to your journey. You go into work, you just go straight into work. And I'm wondering kind of, how do these various jobs start to kind of pull on the threads of your passions? How does that start to emerge for you, where you can see, where you are, what you're passionate about?
I'll just kind of run age 18 to 24, because there's a lot in what you just asked, and there's all these amazing learning experiences. And so again, I, out of high school, went to work in that machine shop for 3.5 years, and and I learned all about hard work, and I worked hard, and I saved money, and I was fully intending on taking my entrepreneurial leap, but I was still so immature. That's where I was just, like I said, working and playing hard. I mean, I was partying, I was working hard, I was having a blast with friends. My wife and I have been together since we were 17 years old. And so she and I were dating through that period. I mean, we just lived large. And I was making a ton of money at that age where all of my friends were off at college, not making any money, And so I had a brand new car and life, I was living large. Anyway, but the plan was always to save up money and take my leap. Not that I knew it was called taking a leap back then. And so my first leap was, I thought I was going to open a corporate travel agency. And so I left the machine shop. I had saved $8,500 I had in my account. I was going to go off and, start a business, do something. And I went to work for a corporate travel agent selling, and learned very quickly that that's the last business on the planet I want to be involved in or own. So I learned there, that's not the business for me. And so now I've learned hard work. I learned a little bit of sales, learned that wasn't for me. I did a mail order business that failed. I started buying and selling real estate, rental properties, actual properties, flipping properties. Through that, did decent. But by this point, I had burned through my $8,500, and I had real estate agents putting the commission in their pocket. And I thought to myself, I'm going to get my license, and I'm going to put that commission in my pocket. And so went and got my license, failed the test the first time because I did the 1-week crash course. I didn't take it serious because I thought it would be a piece of cake. That was a punch in the stomach. That was like my first real failure as I looked at it. And it took the wind out of my sails. And that was actually my wake-up call where I decided it's time to take life serious. I ended up getting my real estate license. The intention was to do it for my investments. But backstory, my dad built a company that was the #1 real estate sales training company in North America. I did not get my license with that intent. But after failing the test the first time, retaking the test and passing, and kind of bumping along with real estate investing, I realized at that point, I had this saying where I said, I realized that there was no get rich quick, there's only get rich slow. And I decided to get into real estate full bore as a real estate agent. And I got in at around age 22, 23, somewhere in there, 22, I think. I was in real estate for just under 3 years. Was incredibly successful, rookie of the year, sold $5 million in real estate my final year, making a 6-figure income. So again, going into that, lost all that money that I saved. That was the first time I went broke, but again, very successful in real estate, and all of a sudden making great money as a 23-year-old kid.
And Gino, sorry, just let me hop in for a second. At that age, with these jobs, with the travel, the real estate, kind of everything that you were dabbling in, was it just that you wanted to make money and be successful? Was that kind of the primary thought at that age? Or was there any part of kind of the idea of passion that had emerged for you yet? It was just straight drive. I want to make money and be successful.
100% just wanted to make money.
Yeah.
And so during this, once I really understood what my dad's company did and what it did for me, because I took all of his training from his partner, I then set a goal for myself that I want to be the president of his company. I want to run that company. I just fell in love with his company, and he didn't want his kids in the business. We'll come back to that in just a second. But up until that moment, with everything I just shared, I was also going to every seminar I can find, reading every book I could find. Back then it was audio cassettes, listening to every audio cassette. I mean, I was a sponge for knowledge. But again, I learned my way, my pace. I could not have, done that in academia. I was this sponge for knowledge. And I just learned a bunch of success principles because I learned how to set goals. I learned how to sell, learned how to bust my ass, top producer. I lived that life, all the plaques, all the trophies, all the this, all the that.
Yeah. But isn't it fascinating that like when you wanted to, you could learn with the best of them.
Absolutely.
I mean, knowledge wasn't the issue. It was that you had to be connected to what you were learning.
And there was this story that really sat with me back then. It was, and I won't get it perfectly, and I won't even get it close to perfect, but there's this story about this homeless man on a bench, and somebody was interviewing him. And in so many words, he was convinced he was going to be successful and ended up becoming successful. But I correlated that to me in my party years from 18 to 21. I knew I was going to be successful, but first and foremost, I was going to live it up during this period in my life, because I figured this is my opportunity to just blow off steam, have a blast, live large. So I always knew I was going to be successful, but I still wasn't fully ready to put 100% of me into it. And so that point at like 23, when I decided to take life serious, I got engaged at that point. It was like 22. The ages are off by a year plus or minus, but I got engaged. I said, enough is enough. Got in my last fist fight, got knocked out because somebody sucker punched me from behind. And I said, I'm never fighting again. And I haven't since.
That's funny. I've been in one fight in my life, and it was a sucker punch.
Yeah.
So it's the only fight I was ever in.
I've been in a lot of them, and I'm happy to say I didn't start a single one. I was always defending someone or myself, but I never back down from a fight. In other words, you were just inviting it if you were looking for a fight. So
it's so funny because I know you as this really melty, kind, loving, great dude. Yeah. Like I don't see you as a fighter, but it's great to know that you had that in you back in the day.
That was still the releasing of all of this anger and this pent up whatever. So 23, decided to take life serious after all of this learning and experience, et cetera. Again, maybe 22. And again, that's when I full steam ahead, set that goal to become president of the company. My dad didn't want the kids in the business. Again, there were 3 boys. And but my dad's partner was enamored with me and convinced my dad. And so my dad said to me, this is while I was selling real estate, he said, if you want to get involved in this company, go sell $5 million in real estate. And once you do that, then come talk to me. And there's an incredible lesson in that for anyone out there with second generation entrepreneurs. If your son or daughter potentially wants to get involved in the business, or you want them in the business, have them go be successful somewhere else. Again, in this new book, I write a whole chapter on second and third generation entrepreneurs from my experience. So that lesson was incredible. And so I went out, I sold $5 million in real estate. Once I hit that number, he said, okay. I came to work for the business. I started at the bottom selling his products door to door. I went from a 6-figure income to 25 grand a year. That was the second time I went broke, but I wanted it so bad. I worked my way up through that company in a year and a half, worked through every aspect of that business to taking over as president, literally in less than a year and a half, replacing the prior president. The reality was the company was in dire need of help. It needed a turnaround. It was in deep, ugly debt. The Gulf War had hit. And so I really felt like I could save the business. And I ended up, like I said, replacing the president, taking the reins of the business. As the story goes, my dad handed me the keys to the business and a $100,000 check and said, if you can save it, here you go. And the rest was kind of history.
Yeah. So I'm curious, kind of going back to that lesson about needing to go do the 5 million before you could come in. Was that because he wanted you to have the self-confidence that you were successful on your own right? Or was that because he wanted to see how committed you were? Why do you give that advice now?
Yeah, yes, and yes. And every other question you would have asked, because it was about confidence, it was about respect from the people that would work for me someday. It was all of the above. And so it definitely gave me the confidence. It definitely gave me the respect from the people around me when I took the business over. It showed that I could do this, somewhere else. But I'm so convinced by that experience. I advise every one of my clients and anyone toying with this idea that have your kid go become successful somewhere else before you bring them into the business. It's the best thing you can do for them.
Yeah. Gino, before we fast forward into your next step in your career and your life, you mentioned therapy. coming into your life, I think around this time, age
Mhm.
23 to 30 is what I think you said.
Yeah.
And, therapy is something that has been very important in my life. And it's something that I've really found people take great kind of comfort in hearing others talk about, especially men. I gave this speech here in Columbus earlier in the year. I guess it was earlier in the year. It's hard to believe that was still this year, where it was to a large group at the Chamber of Commerce at their annual event here in Columbus. And I talked about being in therapy and I talked about my upbringing. And it really surprisingly resonated with people. It was a business community. A lot of men aren't talking about these kinds of things. So if you don't mind, tell me a little bit about your experience in therapy and how that really did start to kind of bring you into who you really are, and kind of how your then life and work evolved from the work you did in therapy.
Sure. Well, I always like to say I've never met anyone that didn't need a little bit of therapy. Okay. And so it is my recommendation to everyone on this planet. So I'm a believer, and I always say I did my 7 years in my 20s, like I said to you. So you're reminding me now of the age. So I got in therapy when I got into real estate. So I was like age 21, maybe 22. So somewhere in there. And it was by the advice of my dad. And what was going on at that point in time, play back all that history, the anger and whatever the other things going on with me. But I was feeling this incredible pressure because I got into the real estate industry and I'm selling residential real estate, and I'm Floyd Wickman's son. Okay. And so you have to understand, he was the guru in the real estate industry. There were 100,000 students that took his program. And here I am, I'm Floyd Wickman's son in real estate. I was fucked from the word go, from a standpoint of I was damned if I did and I was damned if I didn't. And so if I succeeded, well, of course you're going to succeed. You're Floyd Wickman's son. And if I failed, how the hell could you fail? You're Floyd Wickman's son. So I couldn't win, And so I was feeling this incredible pressure. So started going to therapy. And when I say you need to do your 7 years, it starts out weekly and then every other week and then once a month and then you go once a quarter and then you're just kind of going whenever you feel like you need to go. And so by year 7, I was probably going once a year. So it just helped me work through all that. But the greatest lesson that I came out of it with is 2 words: fuck them. Okay. And so what my therapist taught me is fuck them. And so I was so worried about what everyone else thought. I was so worried about everyone's perception. I was so busy trying to be all things to all people and bending to their will, that I just learned that, for the last time, fuck them. So that was really, really powerful and helpful.
It is a really powerful message. And I think it's one that, today's day and age, you have to be a little careful with too, because fuck them doesn't mean that you don't have some sensitivity and care about those around you. It just means that you care about yourself too. And you care about yourself in a way that you're not going to let everybody else define you or keep you from really just being who you are. Right. I mean, it's a really hard learning, very hard learning.
When you say that, it prompts a couple of things. Number one, the last thing you're going to find from me is political correctness. And so I'm more of I prefer to punch you in the face with something you need to hear than tickle you with it. So that's the first thing. Number two, if there's a softer way to say it now later in life, what I'm teaching is let your freak flag fly. Just be yourself 100%, no holds barred, because that's what that's saying. That's the kinder, gentler way of saying fuck them. And so in no way was it this, screw everybody, I'm better than everyone. It was ignore their opinions, ignore their judgment. Don't let their judgment get to you. And so, back in my gritty state, I needed to hear it exactly that way. That helped me really understand how to not let that judgment mess with me.
Yeah, well, I think there's some power in that language too. I mean, that is a message that really needs to be heard really clearly, loudly, boldly. And there's probably not a better word than fuck to be able to say that, but I really think this is like a thing that, as you start to talk about, being an entrepreneur, being an individual, flying that flag, this is really, really tough. I see this in like the venture space. This is part of why I've kind of gotten into venture, and we've talked about, my passion for doing venture different, expanding it. It's that, there's this pressure. There's this pressure that's built in, not too dissimilar from the pressures that, are go to college. When you get into business and the entrepreneur world, the pressure might be, you got to raise capital, you got to please investors, you got to drive valuation. If you're a public company, you got to go quarter to quarter. I mean, there's all kinds of, people, things, kind of expectations, and to really just totally live into fuck them, fly the freak flag. It doesn't just stop once you decide that you're going to, be an entrepreneur, or you're going to live your life however you're going to live it. It keeps coming at you. You got to keep being able to live into who you are.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about kind of how you started to really do that despite whatever challenges were coming to you.
Yeah, for sure. And again, so therapy was a big part of it in my 20s. And again, I'll shoot forward a little bit in history and then come back, because then there were a couple other big moments where I went to Landmark Forum. And so Landmark Forum, I had a big aha moment about vulnerability. And I realized, so I was probably 32 years old, and I realized that I had this Teflon shell that was a foot thick, and I just would not let people in. And something happened in that long weekend that I literally just shed that shell, that suit of armor, and realized the power of being totally vulnerable. And so that ties right to let your freak flag fly, be 100% you. And I was literally like 10,000 pounds lighter at that moment. And so that was a big moment. That was the message back at 22, 23, 24, but really didn't fully sink in until that point. And then the other thing I started to do in my early 30s was start to learn about spirituality, meditation, things like that, which I know is right up your alley. And the Celestine Prophecy, when I read that book, it was like, that's such a great kind of like spirituality 101. It's a great entry book into starting to understand some of those things. And so those things really helped. And then the other thing that's rolling around in my head that I have to say, if I hear this term imposter syndrome one more freaking time. And so that's the latest term. But what I always say, because I've been asked on podcasts 3 or 4 times about this, and it comes up a lot with the work that I'm doing now, because a lot of these people are young people trying to decide if they're entrepreneurs or not. Imposter syndrome is nothing more than insecurity. Okay. It's just, we're all insecure, and ultimately you get to this point where you start to gain some confidence, but you have to start somewhere. You have to pursue things that you're not good at yet. I'm a believer in fake it till you make it. Okay. And it's not in a unintegrous way. I'm trying to think of the perfect way, but when you put yourself out there, when you start a new job, when you start a business, whatever it is, of course you have no idea what you're doing. And the only way you're going to learn to do what you're going to do is by doing it and practicing it and getting good at it. And that journey from that day you start to the day you have the confidence because you've done enough, to call that imposter syndrome, I just have a hard time. I don't love the connotation. You're going to, during that journey, feel insecure. You're going to feel unworthy. You're going to feel these different emotions that are just normal. And so it drives me crazy that there's some negative connotation, or you shouldn't have that, as they call it, imposter syndrome. That's just called being a human being, taking a risk, putting yourself out there and getting good at something.
I actually struggle with the fake it till you make it language, but I use it in the right situation. And I have to kind of try to explain it like you just did, because I really believe that what it really is you're kind of stepping into your best self. Even though you might not feel that way, that is actually who you really are. And sometimes you have to kind of force yourself to be your best self, even if you don't feel that. And so the same is true with, like you said, if you're gonna eventually be that all-star, you got to kind of start somewhere. And if you just tell yourself you're not, then you're never going to even have a chance.
Yeah, and I love, fake it till you make it gets that same visceral reaction with everyone right now. And I don't understand why, because it was so appropriate 30 years ago. And so I don't know what's happened, if we've turned into wimps or what, but call it what you call it. If pick any career, any job, but let's just talk about sales for a minute, since that was my background. If you're going to go get a sales job for the first time and you're going to go on your first appointment and try to sell something, you're terrified. You don't know everything. The only way to learn is to put yourself in that situation. So what's a better way to say that in front of that prospect or that customer or that potential client? You've got to do the best you can with everything you know and make that sale with good intent. But to say, I'm terrified, I only know 25% of what I should at this point in my career. To share the prospect, the potential client or customer, they don't want to hear all of that. So call that what you call that, but that's just all part of life's journey and putting yourself out there and taking risks. When you go start a business, you're petrified, you're terrified. You don't have all the answers. So call that what you want to call that. But you damn well better put on a confident face as you build that business, because if you walk around petrified in front of all your employees and all of your customers and clients, you're going out of business, baby. So anyway, so I don't know if that makes sense, but
it does, because eventually, once you are confident, once you're not terrified, then you don't have to fake it anymore. And so, again, you kind of have to just grind, fake it, call it what you want to get to that point. I agree with you. I want to back up to Landmark, because I'm remembering, and I think we've talked about this before, I also have been profoundly impacted by the experience of Landmark Forum.
I had a funny feeling.
Yeah, and it's funny because you can see it in people and you recognize years later, and I haven't been involved in many years, but my wife and I went. We had family that had really benefited from it, was always talking about it. It was kind of calling me. We went, and I actually had similar language. The language that I came away was, and I'll forget the entire possibility, but the kind of key piece was author of my own life. And so there's something about that experience that is really profound. It has gotten a bad rap in kind of years past, but I think there's something that kind of has been pulled out of Landmark as you've then started to go into EOS, into Leap, right? And it's not necessarily this copycat kind of thing. It's like the experience of transformation, maybe the experience of, seeing other people thrive in life because of something you're doing, right? I mean, is there a correlation to that?
Well, I would just describe it as, I can't remember who created Landmark Forum. I can't remember the name, but
Warner Earhart.
Warner Earhart.
Yeah.
It's just the process he created of taking you on this incredible journey of self-discovery. I mean, it's masterful what he created. And so, I'm not smart enough to figure that out or even try to figure out. I don't want to. I just know the impact it had on me. It got a bad connotation because it's been considered a cult because there are about 1 million of us out there that have gone through it. But also in the early days, you couldn't go to the bathroom, so people would wear a catheter so they could pee because they couldn't get up and go to the bathroom. I mean, so that you're going to get
in the 60s, it was a little off, but
you're going to get negative connotations from that. But it's this incredible process of self-discovery where you just have this ability to kind of step outside of yourself and really see yourself for what and who you truly are. And it's enlightening. And how the hell he did it, I have no freaking clue. But he did, and that's all that matters to me. So I'm not going to waste any time figuring out how it happened or explaining how it happened. It just did, and I recommend it for everyone because it's powerful. And I just did the long weekend, and I think I did a couple meetings after that. So I didn't go all the way in as many people do. But if you're a fanatic about learning and a fanatic about self-discovery, it's a great tool in the tool shed of all the ways to learn. to learn more about yourself.
Okay, well, let's talk about EOS as a tool, and then we're going to really spend our time on Leap. But a lot of people that might be listening probably have read Traction or have been involved in EOS. Talk to me just a little bit about kind of how EOS became what it became, and kind of your experience with that journey, that part of the journey.
Upon taking over the family business, doing the big turnaround, it took me 3 years to turn that business around. My dad as the visionary, myself as the integrator. That's where I invented the visionary integrator concept. I ran the business for a total of 7 years. So got it growing again, got it healthy. We then successfully sold the business. I stayed on for 1.5 years to transition in the new leadership team out of Virginia, and then retired from the company. I got out of a 3-year contract. It was excruciating working for someone. Well, about 6 years into that journey, I got in strategic coach. And in strategic coach, I learned what my unique ability was. And it was an aha moment, because I realized of the 100% of my working time I was spending doing the stuff I was doing, running that business, and I had my hands in everything, I realized there was about 10% of what I was doing, maybe 5%, that was my true unique ability. And I had an aha moment that I'm here to help people run their businesses better. I'm here to help people get what they want from their businesses. I'm here to help entrepreneurs live incredible lives. And so with that clarity, I decided that's what I'm doing next. And again, we sold the business. I stayed on for 1.5 years. I then took a 9-month sabbatical after leaving the company and did a lot of soul searching as to what this next thing looked like. And I threw myself out there and started helping businesses. Had no idea what I was going to do exactly, but after 5 years of honing, trying, testing everything I had ever learned over the last 10 years, I put the finishing touches on what is EOS now. And EOS is a very specific process, a set of tools that helps an entrepreneur of a 10 to 250 person privately held company get everything they want out of their business, helps them run that business like a Swiss watch. And so then shoot forward. Once I finished creating it, I partnered with my partner, Don Tinney. He was a minority owner. I owned the majority of the business. We joined forces, and we now have 375 EOS implementers teaching that system. We have 100,000 companies running on that system. I sold that business 2.5 years ago. I still own 12.5%. I still own the books. I'm still the EOS guy. I still do my speaking, things like that. So half my working time is still EOS. But it all stemmed from this experience, this incredible learning experience in my 20s. My dad was an amazing mentor of mine, as well as a gentleman by the name of Sam Cupp. And I just realized this is what I'm built for. I'm here to help entrepreneurs. I like to say, pull them out of ignorance and suffering, because they make their lives way too difficult. And I help them run their businesses like a Swiss watch. And that's the fastest version I can get.
Sure.
Where EOS came from.
Yeah. Well, and it's, it really is, I think an important part of the journey as you start to now talk about Leap, and I have been an EOS advocate and client, and have it in my system and have for a very long time, and was so fortunate to have found it, because I'm a visionary and I'm not somebody that likes to operate businesses. And I was operating a business and not real happy doing it. And so, I said to my COO at the time, I said, you got to find a system. This isn't working. Go pull something off the shelf. There's systems out there. I hear people talking about it. I was in YPO. I heard my friends at EO. People were talking about this thing. And of course, our mutual friend, Mike Payton, who had kind of sat on my couch and handed me a manuscript to Traction back in the day and said, read this. And I had no idea what he was doing. I was working with a coach at the time. I thought I had the best coach in the world. And I thought, this isn't coaching. I don't know what the hell this thing is. And it wasn't until I was in my own business and I had that experience where I needed a system that I really understood EOS. And thank God I found it. It was amazing. We still operate on it, and everything I do operates on it. But I'm really excited to kind of talk about kind of then why Leap, because I'm happy to be collaborating with you on this. I think there's so much great stuff here for the early part of this journey, right? By the time you get to EOS, you've kind of like, I've already fumbled and made all the mistakes. I mean, it's been torture getting that far.
Oh yeah.
I'm now like you, loving being able to support entrepreneurs in their journey. And so let's talk about Leap. Tell me how that came to be for you, how this experience that you shared with us early on in your life, and then kind of, how you're rolling Leap out now.
Yeah, you bet. So it's interesting because another strategic coach tie-in, it happened when I was 40 years old and we were doing Dan Sullivan's tool called Bigger Future, which got me to look out 10 years. And what I realized, I said, when I turn 50, so I'm sitting there at 40 years old, I said, when I turn 50, I'm going to shift my energy to the front end of the entrepreneurial journey. And so, up until this point, I've spent almost 3 decades helping existing successful entrepreneurs become even more successful. So now I decided I'm going to go to that front end of the journey. And so literally right around my 50th birthday, which one of the reasons I sold EOS Worldwide, that freed up my energy and creativity to really put my energy now into this new project. It's called Entrepreneurial Leap. That's the name of the book. And in its simplest form, like I said earlier, I'm teaching my 18-year-old self, but it's really for anyone, any age 10 to 110. If you think you might be an entrepreneur in the making, this is the tool to help you confirm whether or you are or you aren't, show you a glimpse of the future in all of the possibilities, and then show you a path to get there. And like you said, help you avoid all of the mistakes, or at least half of them that you're about to make. Some of them you still need to make. And so that's the idea. That's the book. That's the content at a very, very high level. And the mission is to impact 1 million entrepreneurs in the making over the next 10 years. And so that's what I've been hunkered down doing. And what I'm doing is joining forces with collaborators. Obviously, you are one of them. And what that is that's anyone out there that wants to help, teach, guide, mentor, coach entrepreneurs in the making. And I give you my content to use freely. And it's a great relationship because you get to be a hero to the people that you're helping in your life. And for me, it's just a pure book play. I'm not looking to build another empire around this thing. So it's the ultimate win-win. And, when I think about your audience out there, I'm guessing your audience, there's probably a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience. And so for anyone out there that wants to help people with this content, go to the website, e-leap.com, click on Become a Collaborator. Or if you are someone that has an entrepreneur in the making in your life and you want to mentor them, or you're trying to figure out if your son or daughter has what it takes, this is an amazing tool to help you help them. And so I urge you to hand them a copy of the book, but also you read the book to really understand that. And then the other audience, if you will, in terms of your audience, I never expected that an existing visionary entrepreneur with a company that's pretty successful would get value out of this book. And so what's happened is, when they read it, it just lights them up. And so you as a visionary, any visionary out there, it's like reading your life story and it just gets you all the way back to the basics. And you have all these incredible ahas and it just kind of resets your soul, if you will. And so that's it in a nutshell. And we can go as deep into that as you want, but that's what it's all about.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, just kind of picking up on the last part of that from a visionary standpoint, you're right. I mean, in some ways, when you're going through the experience and you're just committed to your vision and you're grinding and you want to be successful and you want to see it happen and you want to do it your way and all these things are happening. It's bumpy and it's windy and it's backwards and forwards. The whole thing is kind of this like wild experience. When you kind of read it in Entrepreneurial Leap, you're like, oh, wait, like that's just how it goes. Like there's these steps, these things that happen in this journey. And so like the beautiful thing, what I love about it is you can hand it to somebody before and say, here's what's going to happen. How do you feel about it? If that lights you up, okay, that's a good sign. If that scares the hell out of you, we want to talk. So I like and I love, the simplicity of confirm, the glimpse, the path, the way that you break this down, because I think that really helps make it digestible for people. And I think, you start with confirm. Yeah. There's this kind of like maybe trend now where, maybe Silicon Valley or whatever the aspirational, kind of self-managed company, there's all this like, I want to be free, kind of a share economy stuff happening, right? The millennial thing, like it's not for everybody. That first step is really, really critical.
Here. Yeah, and that was the whole idea behind Confirm. And my aha is that before we even talk about entrepreneurship, let's make sure you have what it takes to become an entrepreneur. And so that's the whole focus on the first third and the first part of the book. I believe there are 6 essential traits that every true entrepreneur has. You're either born with them or you're not. There's an assessment. It's free and available again on the website, e-leap.com. But it takes you through this process of literally scanning your body and making sure that entrepreneurship is right for you, because it's not for everyone. I believe 4% of the population is meant to be an entrepreneur. And so it is kind of a punch in the gut for some people that realize they're not, but I believe I'm doing them a service because I'm preventing them from 10 years of hell if this is not for them. However, if you do take the assessment, score 90 or higher, you are probably an entrepreneur in the making. Then we take you to Glimpse and really light you up.
Yeah, the other thing that I really like, and I want to talk a little bit about kind of your model for collaboration. But one of the other things that you said, which I think is really interesting, is as a parent, the value of understanding this. Because if your kids are coming to you and they're saying, I don't want to go to college, or if they're coming to you and saying, I want to start my own business, or whatever it is, at whatever age, there's a lot of young entrepreneurs out there right now, to understand your child in that way and to be able to maybe take yourself out of the equation and try to support them. This is a great tool.
Here. It gets to my point with my parents giving us so much freedom to carve our own path. I mean, that was so helpful. So yes, it's going to help you understand your son or daughter if they're exhibiting these signs of an entrepreneur, and you might be getting frustrated with them because of the ADHD and all the traits that go on with an entrepreneur. So it's going to help you understand them better. It's going to help them understand themselves better. And it is going to help you, again, just read that chapter on college or not. Look at all the data, see all the facts. It's going to give you a sense of peace in helping your son or daughter make the right choice for themselves.
Yeah, and your father, I believe, wrote a book on mentorship, right? And mentorship becomes a big part of this. So, just kind of, having spent this hour with you and connecting the dots and seeing the role that your parents played from that early childhood, watching, learning, observing, the whole thing. Now to be able to write your own books, right? And to be able to offer something for parents and for other entrepreneurs. The mentorship is a big piece of this too. Maybe you could speak to that, but it's really a kind of a full circle thing for you, right? I mean, this is, you have taken your whole life, all of that experience to get you to be doing the work that you're doing.
You bet. And so I write an entire chapter in the path part of the book on finding a mentor and the power of mentorship. And certainly I reference my dad's book because, yes, he wrote the book on mentoring, which is so incredible. So in a nutshell, though, I would say a couple of things. If you out there have interest in mentoring entrepreneurs in the making, you'll see a tool in a video called Mentor Track. And it's a 5-step track that I will do 80% of the heavy lifting for you on the front end to make sure you've got a great protege to mentor and they're ready for you. And so there's a really simplified track. Go to the website, e-leap.com. You'll find it there, Mentor Track. Little deeper dive on that, though, and getting into some of my dad's teaching, and this is all in that chapter. But the real secret in mentorship and just focusing on an entrepreneur in the making, you will succeed and you will be fine without a mentor. So it's important to start there and know that. And of all of the research I did, half of these successful entrepreneurs had mentors, half didn't. So it's not a death sentence, but it is a speed pass if you do have a mentor because you learn from all of their experiences. And so a couple of thoughts. Number one, it's about finding someone who is where you want to be. And so there's this tool I offer in the book that helps you really start to understand and decide on what is the right business for you. And the idea is once you have that clarity, go find somebody in that business and ask them to be your mentor. And so you got to reach out and you got to ask people, and you're going to hear no's because these are busy people. But assuming you find one and you get a yes, you meet for an hour and you talk and you discuss and you share each other's stories. And at the end of that, you decide if you're going to have a mentor-protege relationship. And if you decide yes, you agree on a format going forward. And so my business mentor, Sam Cupp, we met every month, 90 minutes for literally 5 years. My dad's relationship was much more ad hoc in how we did it, but you just agree on a format and you go forward. That's mentorship. And again, it's a speed pass. Now, if you can't get a mentor to say yes, I would urge you to consider going and working for someone who's where you want to be, just like I did in the travel industry and realized I didn't want to do that. And if you can't get paid doing that, then work for them for free, because that's its own degree to be entrenched in something that you want to do and learn from that person. So that's kind of a high level on mentorship, how important it is and how to find one.
Yeah, I think it's really great. I mean, I like this idea that you can just be learning from people all over the place. I mean, I learned from my parents. I've learned from jobs. I've learned just from watching people. I learned from my wife. I learned from my kids, right? But I also have had the good fortune of having mentors along the way. One in particular comes to mind, Bruce Saul, who actually was the guy that when I said I want to go get an MBA, say just join YPO. YPO led me to my Built to Lead coaching. That started my business. I mean, the kind of learnings that you get along the way, those shortcuts, that speed pass, they can really, really influence your journey. So I think it's wonderful.
And again, hopefully it came through, because worst case, if you can't find a mentor and you can't work for one, go work for them for free for 3 months and just get entrenched in their business, be at their beck and call, work for them 24/7. It's the best education you'll ever get on the business you're about to start.
Yeah. And so kind of last question, I want you to just explain a little bit more about your collaboration model, because I think this is really unique. It's not that you went out and kind of started an early stage EOS. This is a totally different thing.
Exactly.
And it's really innovative. And you and I are both, really have benefited greatly from Strategic Coach. The idea of collaboration really, really has hit home for me there. And you've built this whole business on a collaboration model. Talk a little bit about how people can get involved and collaborate.
Would love to. So right now we have about 65 collaborators, so that you know the number. And what it's about is, first and foremost, I don't want to build another empire. I don't want another 375 implementers all over the world. I don't need another empire. And so this model is different and unique and innovative because it works like this. I'm joining forces with collaborators to give you my content for free. And so a collaborator is anyone out there that wants to teach, mentor, guide, coach entrepreneurs in the making. These are colleges, high schools, for-profits, non-profits, individuals, again, anyone who's out there teaching entrepreneurs or wants to. Like I said, I give you my content for free. All I ask in exchange is that you give credit where credit's due and let them know that a book exists. Again, for me, it's a book play. It's not about building another empire. This is a passion project of mine. With that, you're then free to go teach that content however you want, as much or as little as you want. And then we're just kind of building a community where the collaborators get a quarterly update from me. We do a brainstorm call here and there. We touch base once in a while. We're about to launch a LinkedIn group where they can interact with each other. And this thing is just evolving into something really, really cool, where these people, these collaborators, are heroes to their audience. And that's what's most important to me. I just want them to be more of a hero to their audience. It's the collaborator that I'm most passionate about. And so that's the model. And then there's a little kicker that if they actually move directly or indirectly some number of books, then I donate an hour of my time from afar. And so that's kind of the icing on the cake in the relationship. But it's really cool watching some of these things evolve. And so no money changes hands, no contracts, no nothing. It's just total freedom. Bunch of people passionate about helping entrepreneurs in the making.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I'm happy to be able to work with you on this and to have you as a friend and know you and learn from you. And thanks for giving me your time today. Any final thoughts, Gino, that you want to share with the audience and make sure we know where we can find you? We'll put all that stuff in the show notes too. But any kind of final thoughts as we wrap up?
Yeah, well, I would say that I think you've taken me deeper than any other podcast. So for this project, I've now done about 70 podcasts, which, like I said, I didn't do any for EOS Worldwide in 20 years. There was one that maybe took me about this deep. So you're good at this. You're great at this. It was fun, a little uncomfortable. So that's kind of cool. I like being uncomfortable. So thank you for that. And like you said, in terms of where to go, the epicenter of all things Entrepreneurial Leap is e-leap.com.
Wonderful. Gino, thanks again. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to have this time with you.
Had a blast, Brett. Thanks.